right, I'll wait a minute before starting to see if anyone else slides in. All right. Hi, Jamie. All right. I'll just start, and if people jump in at any point, I can answer questions later. All right. So my name is Yue. I'll introduce myself in a minute, but the presentation I'm giving today is called "Please Stop Telling Me That's a Substyle." I'm going to be talking about the history of gyaru, makeup, clothing, styles, and kind of dissecting where the West got it wrong, things that were mistranslated or misunderstood. And at the end, I'm going to wrap up with a little, a little bit about why this is all important, like why the wording and the translation actually matters. All right, so the first thing that I want to say is, my name is Yue. I've been gyaru for 5 years, and I love fashion history, cosplay, gaming, and reading. And here are some pictures of me, kind of prove my credentials, I guess. All right, so some things to keep in mind. I am not here to tell you that any of you are wrong. If I say anything that goes against what you thought you knew, or contradicts things that you might know, please feel free to ask questions. My next point is that I do not know everything. I'm not like professing myself as like, the end all be all of gyaru. I was not living in Japan during the Heisei era. I was not a part of this. So everything I know through fashion archiving and looking back with a very careful lens. So, please keep that in mind. Like, just because I say something doesn't mean that it's like 100% like, oh, everything has to follow this, okay? As with most fashion subcultures and fashion histories, things are very fluid and, subject to change. So gyaru history is not set in stone. It was ruled by trends, and it was extremely fast-paced. A lot of the popular models back in the day would even say that, like, by the time these trends got into egg or ranzuki, they were out. They were not fashionable anymore. So it's important to realize that like there's a lot to cover, and it changes a lot. And another little note on tanning in gyaru culture. So the elephant in the room. Tanning is a big part of a lot of gyaru looks. So especially ganguro, yamamba, and related trends, which we will talk about. They involve extremely dark tans that can be uncomfortable or unpleasant to see for some viewers, particularly outside of Japan. And this initially comes from a place of rejecting beauty standards, where in Japan, the traditional beauty standards have typically included pale skin and a light complexion. Rejecting that to gyaru meant tanning, lightening their hair, dressing outside of the norm, and all of these things that I'm about to cover. But as gyaru became popular and more mainstream, the really alternative girls that wanted to stick out and, kind of prove that they were the most hardcore, I guess, kept tanning, kept lighting their hair, kept on going further and further. From a Western point of view, it's very uncomfortable because it resembles blackface in some of these pictures. And I think it's important when we're looking at these pictures to kind of remember that while this doesn't absolve anyone, these gyaru did not have the same socio-political context that we do when we're seeing the pictures. They don't have the same history classes that we grew up with and a racial and cultural framework that we have. So I think it's important to not just forgive them like, oh, it's okay, they don't know, because that's infantilizing, but, kind of keep that in mind, take it with a grain of salt. All right, so now that we have covered that, we are going to discuss what gyaru substyles look like in the West. And as I'm going through this, I'm going to have to be on the presentation screen flipping through, so I will get to any questions afterwards. So first we have agejo, which is a substyle that was started by Ageha magazine. And in its heyday, it was primarily worn by hostesses and cabaret girls. And you could see it was like very feminine, very sexy, very pink, and with lots of frills and bows. Though it's important to note that agejo could technically include everything that Ageha magazine produced. So it is not just this colorway, but this is what's most popular in the Western community. All right, next we have amekaji, which is American casual. And it is bright with a lot of denim and colors and patterns, really out there. And it is kind of inspired by the stereotypical view of American style. You know, very pop art inspired, very iconographic, with a lot of baggy pants, big sneakers, that sort of thing. Next, we have ane, which is one of the more mature styles. Think rebellious older sister, or like cool older sister. So this is where we see tattoos and piercings become more common, and a lot of black, a lot of leather, a lot of form-fitting clothing to kind of give you that more like elegant look. Nails and makeup were a little bit simpler. Eyeliner was normally smoked out, and to kind of like set apart from the younger gals. And this is a substyle that a lot of girls would evolve into in their later years, though there's a lot of fluidity between, you know, maturing into substyles. All right, next we have boho or psyche, and this is like typical boho fashion. You can see like the flowers, the floral dresses, the beaded necklaces, the headbands. It's all very, very typical of Western psychedelic fashion as well. You know, in some circles, you would see a lot of tie-dye and like logos from the Grateful Dead or Jimi Hendrix too. Though it was used more for the look and less for the lifestyle or enjoyment of that particular music or culture. Then we have ganguro. I have quotes around this because this is one of the ones that we're going to be dissecting later. This is what in the West we call ganguro, or old school gyaru. Very 90s, dark tans, white makeup, bleached hair, a lot of platforms, a lot of tropical motifs, and a lot of clothing inspired by idols at the time. So like that kind of darker skin, like more rebellious, sexy look you can see on the bottom with the girls with the suede and the mini skirts. And again, we will return to this to discuss why it's a little bit of a misnomer. All right, next we have cyber gyaru, which is a fairly recent addition. I believe it first popped up in 2019. And this was started by Instagram model Didi, who you can see right here in both pictures. And it's not widely worn or observed, but I felt like it still deserved a place in the kind of like substyle breakdown because it is very distinct in image. You know, it doesn't really fit under another category. It has a little bit of the kind of like ganguro or mamba style tan and heavy makeup, lots of lashes, bright hair. But it throws in a lot of neon colors, patterns, and, you know, trinkets just kind of everywhere in your hair, on your nails. And it's very distinct in that way. So I thought it deserved a spot here. All right, next we have goshiku or gothic. And this is very similar to your standard style goth in the West. You know, most things that we see here, like all black, a lot of lace and platform shoes, tall boots, a lot of cross symbols, very much what you would see over here as well. But there are trends within Goshiku that are more gyaru oriented. Then we have raku, which is rock gyaru. And this is really a broad range of like punk and hardcore elements. It's much more overstated and with a lot of like zippers, safety pins, studs, rhinestones, very over the top, very glam, and still on the darker side, but there is more color involved, as you can see. All right, then we have Hari, which is similar to cyber gyaru in being more of a trend than a fully fledged substyle. But again, it's very distinct, and it did run its course for a few years, so I think it deserves a spot here. Hari comes from the Japanese word for flashy. So it really just means like out there. I kind of think of it as a mix between like Western scene fashion and amekaji mixed together. Very like out there, clashing patterns and colors. And in the later years of it, you would see more of like the baggy hoodies with a mini skirt like you see at the bottom. All right, next is Hime, and this is one that pretty much everyone knows. Hime means princess, which really perfectly sums it up. Focuses on the ultra soft, ultra feminine styles, but in a very over-the-top way. Very cute and feminine elements like soft colors, pastels, lace, bows, and a lot of deco, a lot of rhinestones and glam. Big hair and with accessories all in it. And, you know, even little trinkets like your phone or your nails were completely decoed out. This is another one, kogyaru or kogal. This is another one that we're going to be talking about later, hence the quotes. But it is incorrectly referred to as a substyle in the West. All you need to know of it right now is that it originated from the way in the 90s that girls used to dress when they went to walk around or shop with their gyaru friends in Shibuya normally. They would roll down their socks to make them look like leg warmers and hike up their skirt to make it shorter. A lot of them would accessorize with lightened hair or a darker tan. And that was kind of like the origin of gyaru as a whole. And the image of them is very iconic, like all across the world. All right, then we have One, which is older sister gyaru. This is like Ane's more posh, refined counterpart. If Ane is like the rebellious older sister, this is like the cool, rich older sister, I guess. More understated, as you could see, like the hair is more sleek, usually curled or blown out. Very high heels, and it focuses a lot on like brand name and sex appeal. All right. Next we have Ora, which is a tougher style. This was very much tied with Yankee culture and biker culture, which kind of have been lost in translation in the West. It is tougher, usually all black, studs, leather, a lot of tattoos and piercings. You'll even see things like shaved heads and stuff in this style, and heavy eye makeup as well. Very smoky eye makeup. All right, next we have Mamba, which is also very iconic. This is one of the ones that I think people think about when they think of gyaru. This is, dark tans, colorful or lightened hair, white makeup all over the face like I have right now, a lot of eyeliner, and a lot of accessories. You would even see Tsuyome Manba, which means like strong Manba, which was even more over the top, like hair extensions down to the floor and uncomfortably dark tans, as we discussed before. which was meant to be like the top most intense of the Manba styles. All right, and finally we have tsuyome, and this comes from the Japanese word that means strong. So it's literally just strong gal style. Anything that's really out there, glam, really over the top, is tsuyome. You see a lot of zebra print, a lot of leopard print, a lot of blinked out belts, long nails, big hair. And this is often in the West confused with ora. So you see a lot of the outfits that are like that all black kind of with the metal accessories labeled as tsuyome. And while it is technically not false, it's usually ora and not tsuyome. Tsuyome features a lot more colors and patterns most of the time. But it is an umbrella that fits many styles. All right. So next we are, I'm just looking through the comments real quick to make sure that I did not miss anything. All right, awesome. So we are going to divide these kind of corrections that we're making into 3 categories. So first is that is not a substyle and that is a lifestyle. The second is that's not a substyle. Those are just characteristics. And third is things that the West just got completely wrong. Some things labeled as substyles weren't even fashion categories. They were, behaviors, social positions, things limited by age, and fashion followed the lifestyle, not the other way around. So some of these things have been incorrectly labeled as a substyle, which kind of insinuates that you can pick it up and get into it when that's just really not the truth with some of these, unfortunately. All right, so our first thing is that's not a substyle, that's a lifestyle, kogyaru. If you recall, I talked about that this is girls in high school altering their uniforms to kind of have more like cool girl look to it. And it was really just rebelling against the idea that these uniforms had to be ugly looking, with skirts down to their knees and stuff. A lot of interviews with kogyaru in the 90s, they said that they would get the smallest skirt and then pull it up to their rib cage because that's how long the skirts were. And some of them would even have a different uniform that wasn't their school uniform to wear out shopping and hanging out because their actual school uniform was so ugly. And it was seen as so cool and enviable to be out in your school uniform that they would have a cuter one. So kogyaru originated as a code by bouncers at nightclubs to distinguish minors from adults. So when these girls would try to sneak into nightclubs, they would use this word kogyaru. So it strictly means gyaru in high school or gyaru in school. It is not something that could be just picked up and chosen. If something you aged out of, when you graduated school, you were no longer a kogyaru, you were just a gyaru. And it wasn't really defined by a specific fashion formula because it was literally a school uniform. And it was also a life stage rather than a style. Like it was something that you stopped off at, but it wasn't a forever style. So here is a little bit of a difference between nanchate seifuku and kogyaru. So nanchate seifuku is like wearing a uniform in a romanticized kind of way. It's a cute uniform. It's not an actual school uniform. You're sort of reminiscing about your high school days. You're doing it to dress up. As you'll see many of the egg models, like I have over on the left, do for photo shoots and stuff. These on the right are what actual kogyaru look like. Their hair wasn't done up like it is on the left. It wasn't professionally done. And some of the outfits weren't really that cute. A lot of them would just go out and buy men's polo shirts so they would get that kind of baggy look, as you can see on the bottom left right here. And there's a pretty striking difference because the ones on the left are professional models and the ones on the right are just girls that Egg would occasionally photograph. So yeah, all in all, kogyaru is not a style. If you want to dress up in a uniform, that's fine. You're not a kogyaru unless you are in high school, though. All right. The next thing that we are going to be covering is that is not a substyle. Those are characteristics. So ganguro and kurogyaru are both referring to the skin tone and the tanning associated with it, and not a fashion style. Ganguro comes from the term for an extremely sunburnt face, and then you get dark face, and then which is ganguro, and that was like the popular way to refer to these girls: tan skin, light hair, and heavy makeup. When you think of gyaru in the 90s, this is probably what you're thinking of. It's the very like iconic look. There was also words for gonguro and bachiguro to refer to even darker girls. So very popular Egg models would often go to the point of bachiguro, which was like a very, very dark tan. That's that uncomfortably dark tans that we were talking about before again. All right. So here's some picture examples for everyone. These girls, while wearing varying clothing styles, they are all ganguro. Extreme tans with bleached hair and light colored makeup. And this was not really, it was rebellion in its own way, but by the mid to late 90s, it was a cool and generally popular thing to do. Like you weren't really outcast for doing this. You can see that these girls are at all kinds of parties. They're always out in Shibuya. They're always out doing something. So this was like a kind of popular girl thing to do. And it's kind of misunderstood that these girls were outcast for whatever reason because they were different. And it's just not the truth. I think it's maybe because they look odd to first-time viewers of gyaru, but it was a trendy thing to do. And why it's misunderstood is that ganguro girls normally fit into multiple different substyles because ganguro refers to the skin tone and the general look of like lightened hair and makeup. So there were two main substyles. There was amuro and there was loco gal. So amuro or amura was after Namie Amuro, the singer. So this was more of a polished look. Still had the tan, the lightened hair and everything. They were still ganguro, but it was more about the platform boots, plaid skirts, collared shirts. The all white setup here was a very popular look for a while after Namie Amuro did a similar look. And loco gal was the typical kind of tropical 90s girl that is very popular. So it's those tropical motifs, the alberosa and cocolulu stuff, platform sandals, and just like a generally beachy look. A lot of them would wear sarongs or pareos out as clothing instead of a cover-up. And a lot of them would wear sun hats, big sunglasses, like they were always headed to go out swimming. All right, and now we're going into the early 2000s and 2010s, where kurogyaru became a more popular term than ganguro. And this became more popular thanks to the group Black Diamond. And it's really just the newer updated term for ganguro. And it literally just means dark gyaru. So it just means gyaru with a tan. It is not any specific clothing style, although in the West it has been associated with ora ora and tsuyome as substyles in general. But neither of those really require a tan. And just because you are a kurogyaru does not mean that you have to dress like that. So you can see this is typically what the West perceives to be kurogyaru. these are all members of Black Diamond, and they had a huge social media presence, so they were kind of like the blueprint for that. They all were pretty similar styles, and by the end of Black Diamond had a little bit of a uniform almost, with the fuzzy leg warmers, jean shorts, and big dia belts. So this is actually Tsuyome. It's out there. It has the colorful, flashy style, a lot of patterns and big nails. But Kuro only refers to their skin tone, nothing else. So like I could have, pale skin as I do and dress like Black Diamond. That does not make me a Kuro gyaru. I'd be Tsuyome, but I'm very, very pale. All right. I'm going to click back to look for any questions before we start Banba. All right. Thank you. I love that you guys are all like participating and enjoying this. All right. Now we're going to talk about Banba, which is a very hotly contested term in the West. And it has a completely different meaning in Japanese gyaru circles. So in the West, Banba is seen as toned down manba. This kind of makeup where it's, still tan and still white, but less, not the droops like I have on my face, but less eyeliner, but still kind of like an out there wild style. Photos of looks like these are what you'll find if you search it anywhere. This is not what Banba ever was, unfortunately. This is actually like these kinds of looks were referred to as seremba or celebrity manba, which featured a lot of like cool ash toned hair, glamorous makeup with glitter, and kind of like a early 2000s Paris Hilton type look to the clothing. Banba was a combination of Barbie and manba. So it was bright clothing, heavy makeup, and it was created by the gal circle Angelique to pay homage to gyaru of the 90s. So those 90s gyaru, the local gals that had the bright colors and big hair and that sort of thing, like the first manbas, had kind of, phased out by the end of the 90s, and it was becoming more popular to be a little bit more toned down. So Angelique wanted to kind of refresh this and make it so that being really out there, being really colorful was popular again because they admired that style. Though, as for the reason why it didn't last very long, once other people outside of Angelique started dressing in this, some members got very annoyed. They accused Egg magazine of copying them by putting their models in this outfit, and then they stopped wearing it. So not a very pleasant story, admittedly, but now kind of as a result of that, we don't really have many records on what Banba even was. I have some other magazine clippings about Banba, and the most important point of the outfit was that neon color all around. The neon knee socks were a really popular addition to this. And it's funny because Banba was kind of overrun by different trends about 6 months into it. And one of the Angelique gyaru was quoted as saying that she just didn't really feel like wearing knee-high socks anymore because they kept rolling down when she was dancing, and it was really annoying, and that's why she switched. So a lot of these things are not driven by like social commentary or, wanting to be different. It was just like, oh, well, this is really annoying and I don't want to do this anymore, so I'm going to change my style. All right. Now that we've kind of covered like examples of what the West got wrong, I want to talk about what the difference is between a trend and a substyle and why that even matters at all. Because at the end of the day, they are just both words, but I think that especially in a niche of interest like gyaru, where we are not consuming the content in its original language, it's very important to be very mindful of how it's translated and how we honor the original word and trend associated with it. And yeah, why the translation and how we look at it even matters is because not everything labeled substyle historically was one, as we just saw. Kogyaru not being a substyle would really like get some gyaru on the internet very up in arms, but it's just the truth. And so when everything becomes a substyle, then there's like no clear lines anymore. It kind of devalues everything. When in reality, in history, a lot of these different substyles came as a result of lifestyle. I believe I said before that, the lifestyle came first and then the fashion followed, like the girls wearing their uniforms and then altering it to fit their own fashion afterwards. It wasn't like, oh, I'm going to get into this for the fashion, at least in the early days. In the 2010s, it became a little bit more like that as social media kind of rose. So yeah, it kind of like delegitimizes everything and makes it less like, takes away from the history of it in a way. And so why everything actually just feels like a substyle nowadays is that substyle is many, many things. It is a whole culture, because you see with like ora ora, you see that it's tied to Yankee culture, it's tied to biker culture. There's a lot of other stuff that ties into it. It's not just dressing like that, it's living the lifestyle. Some labels describe fashion, some describe trends, some describe lifestyle, and some describe features or characteristics. And in the West, as we consume gyaru, these have all been flattened into being just substyle, when that's not the actual meaning of that word. It's much more multi-layered than that. And it's very reductive to a fashion style with a very illustrious history. And it is stifling for those who are still living it. It's uncomfortable to be kind of forced into a box like that. So how I know something is a substyle is for one thing that you can look at it and immediately see. Like if I look at this, I know that's a raku gal. I know immediately. When I see this, that's a manba gal. There's no way she could be anything else. This is an amekaji gal. There's no way she could fit into anything else. Like these are distinctive examples of their respective substyles, and that's why it's important. It gives a sense of community. It gives a commonality between people, and it allows you to explore different facets because you're not set to one substyle. Actually, of these three pictures, this is actually all the same person. Her name is Kaneko Kawabata, and she was an egg model, and she had her own brands, but she would play around with substyles a lot. She did a lot of softer, more feminine ones as well, but she never really limited herself to one. All right. So the importance of, hold on. I meant to take this out. I apologize. So the importance of like kind of keeping this meaning from gyaru comes into play when we see kind of massive reassignment or recategorization of gyaru culture. We see on TikTok a lot. I'm going to refer to TikTok as like the big bad, kind of, because it just kind of instigates this culture a little bit or allows it to keep going. But given that we have distance from the source material, it's archive-based learning through magazines, mostly done by people who do not speak or read Japanese, myself included. And these things don't have an actual timeline. Like I said, even the Angelique Gyaru would say that by the time something got into Egg magazine, it was out of style because a few months had already gone by and they were onto something new. So we don't have a really accurate timeline. And now with these magazines being marked up so much and so difficult to get, it makes it difficult to kind of form that. Then we have fandom logic applied to real subculture. Gyaru is something that people actually live, and it's not something that you can apply kind of fandom logic with very rigid rules and kind of like the fake purity tests that people conduct on the internet. You can't really apply that to a real culture that people live off of the internet. It just doesn't work the same way. And finally, a desire for legitimacy. People want to be recognized as gyaru. They want to live their truth as a gyaru. So all in all, this hasn't come from malice. It's not like someone went on the internet and was like, oh, I'm going to like ruin everything we know about gyaru. I'm going to mix it all up. It came from distance and like desire to want to be part of a subculture that had kind of phased out by the time a lot of us got into it. So with modern internet culture, this is the TikTok of it all. It's a lot of short form content, and certainty is rewarded with everything. So someone's visibility on social media often seems to equate to their authority on a topic, which is kind of insane when you say it out loud. And it's also kind of rich coming from me as I sit here and dump information on you all, I know. But it's always a good thing to be reminded to consume carefully. You know, not everything you hear is automatically true. Maybe hear it from 3 or 4 sources before you take it as gospel. And even then, be open to changing your mind. This has helped me a lot in, you know, going through history and learning more about gyaru. Like, I thought that banba was casual manba makeup back in the day too. I had to learn and change my opinion. On social media, you see a lot of people identifying with aesthetics that they consume. So, oh, I consume a lot of gyaru content. Like, I'm part of that. When the unfortunate truth is that if you're not part of the subculture, you're not part of the subculture. You can't really slap that label on. That also kind of ties into the claiming labels before participation. And then finally, we have kind of treating a culture or a subculture as just a vibe or a mood. You know, we see it on TikTok with like skater culture getting turned into older brother core, or we see goth getting turned into clean goth or goth core. It's all a Pinterest board. It's all just a theme. It's not an actual lifestyle anymore, which is disingenuous to being a gyaru. All right. So what happens when we mix these things up, when we change what things mean and we don't honor translations or, you know, actual history? Mislabeling freezes these trends, and they are trends. They are fashionable. They're meant to evolve. They're meant to change with time. We don't look exactly like these Heisei gyaru did, and that's okay because it's different now. When we have this kind of rigid culture of people on TikTok having the authority over everyone and kind of enforcing those fandom rules and logic on a real subculture, people get forced to choose between substyles, which leads to a lot less experimentation. I showed you before Kaneko. She was one of the most famous gyaru models, I would say, of all time, honestly, and was never limited by substyle. It's not the end of the world. Like, you can dip between them. Surely it's easier to just do one or two, but it's fun to experiment, and experimentation drops when we mix these things up. Getting older in a subculture that has historically been centered around youth and aging out of certain categories becomes a lot harder when kind of this misinfo is spread. I've noticed this a lot. It becomes more difficult to grow, to change your opinions, or just to get physically older because of these kind of rigid fake purity rules, as I said right here. It's a pointless litmus test of things that don't need to be tested. You can live authentically as a gyaru and do your own thing and never be involved with any community on the internet and still be a real gyaru. Like, this is just on a screen in front of us. I sound like a boomer, but it is. It's not real. And it's kind of twisted the subculture in an unfortunate way that I've only kind of recently seen start to be undone. So this brings us to the famous question: I can't do this. Can I still be gyaru? And this is a very like rage-baity question on social media. Gyaru is visually striking, so people want to be a part of it. They're drawn to it, but it's decontextualized a lot on social media. It's just a cool look. There's nothing behind it. So people want the idea of the confidence, the cool appearance, the nice clothes, but they don't want things like hours of styling hair, or putting on a bunch of pairs of false lashes, or putting on contact lenses every day, or trying to live with nails that are 6 inches long. That kind of stuff is hard. That's not glamorous. That's not fun. So you hear things like, oh, I can't wear makeup and I can't wear lashes. Can I still be gyaru? Or my parents will get mad, so I can't do this. And what I always want to respond to this is that rebellion is kind of baked into the fabric of gyaru. It was specifically built on resisting norms, as you've seen through this presentation. And it's okay to admire gyaru, be inspired by gyaru, and enjoy the culture without trying to label yourself a gyaru. I have plenty of friends that are in other subcultures that are just huge fan of gyaru history and archive fashion, but they don't want to do it themselves. And honestly, I respect that, because it's tiring. It's tiring doing all this. It takes a long time. But it's active participation. So it feels a little, I guess, disrespectful to like the original gyaru that, went through a lot more work in a world that was not really accepting of alternative people back in the day, like finding the one pure white eyeshadow that they could and using it for a year. Very similar to how goths operate now, how they have to go out and buy all their makeup on Halloween. So I think it's important to talk about the difference between accessibility versus opting out completely, because there are levels. It's, it doesn't have to be like, oh, you have to do your makeup in this way or else you're not a gyaru. There's ways around this, like simplified makeup, occasional participation, slower progression. Like these things are acceptable and okay. I'm a teacher. I don't look like this at school. I can't wear this at school. My kids would be terrified. I don't wear gyaru every day, but I'm still a gyaru, like 100%. I just have to choose because I chose a life where I could not wear this every day. And then opting out completely would be not engaging at all and kind of wanting the label with no participation. And that is what is not okay. And that is what dilutes the subculture as a whole. All right, so I'm going to speed through the end so I can make sure I have time for questions. But yeah, basically, all in all, social media emphasizes this confusion. Labels are treated as personal property rather than a group descriptor, and people get possessive and very weird about it. And then we're coupling that with a fear of people invalidating you on the internet, a fear of posting as a baby gyaru because you don't think your makeup is good enough. Like there's no safe space to get constructive criticism. And that's just not something that we want. Everyone starts somewhere. And as we see this, as this goes on over time, the meaning behind these labels that I've been talking about seems to stretch and blur. And it eventually loses its meaning altogether, which we don't want to have happen. So the hard truth is that gyaru is not just something you are in your head. It is something you do in the world, in real life, even if it is imperfect. It doesn't have to be constant participation. It doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't have to be extreme, but it does have to exist in some minuscule way. And that's just the foundation of the subculture as a whole. And if that's not something that you're interested in, then it's not for you, but you can absolutely still enjoy it and be inspired by it. And before, when I was talking about that, being so flimsy with these labels feels disrespectful to, earlier gyaru. It's a rebellious subculture, and rebellion has stakes. So, of course, this isn't about shaming anyone for not wanting to, introduce stakes in their personal life. So, there was a culture of risk, kind of. A lot of gyaru were in open conflict with their parents. They had trouble in school. They would sneak out. Some girls ran away. Some would take trains into major cities like Tokyo and sleep on the street or in an internet cafe all weekend because that in real life access mattered to them so much more than comfort. So it's a personal question of asking kind of like, how far am I willing to go for this? Like I said, I have a job where I can't wear gyaru every day. And I've had to weigh in my head, like, is this something that I'm okay with? Only, truly being myself outside of work. And for me, it's fine because I enjoy my job. But, it's kind of something that you have to, it's an open dialogue that you have to have with yourself. So, when I hear things like, oh, I can't wear makeup, my parents will be mad, it's worth remembering that historically, gyaru was really about choosing visibility and choosing to be yourself over those opinions, even if it caused problems with family, with authority figures, and all that kind of thing. And I do not mean at all to romanticize hardship or, tell young people to put themselves in danger. Please do not do that. But if your circumstances mean that you can't fully participate, participation might just have to look different. You might just have to lay low and, read magazines and just kind of hunker down until you move out. And that's okay. All right. So we started by kind of going through gyaru subcultures, kind of giving context to people who might not be as familiar. Then we explored how some of these things have been incorrectly warped in the past when it's been adapted to the West, and reclassified as substyles when they never really were in history. And then after that, we moved into a broader idea of gyaru's modern iteration, like new gyaru, I guess, and something really fluid and something that's supposed to be lived being turned into like a rigid taxonomy of, okay, you have to fill this category and this category, and it's very neatly defined. And so when these things are flattened like that and they kind of lose meaning, and gyaru today is more rule bound than it ever was in the past. But it's also worth saying that it never was a free for all either. It wasn't just you could go out, no makeup ever, and say, I'm a gyaru. It still had expectations. It just didn't have these strict rules of participation. And as this kind of rebellion and look has become more of a performance and less of a personal choice, as a refusal to accept beauty standards, it's the meaning behind it kind of withers away, unfortunately. So understanding the real meanings behind this and honoring them and helping to spread the word, educate others, is really important in my opinion. All right. If anyone has any questions, they can send them. I also wanted to put up that all the little gal illustrations are from galter.com. They're very cute, and they're also very informative if anyone wants to go there about the specific timelines of certain gyaru trends. So it's a very good resource if you ever want to start. I think much better resource than the gyaru wiki, which is a little bit outdated. How did I learn all this knowledge? A lot of time, honestly, a lot of looking through old magazine scans on the Internet Archive and on Flickr and everywhere on the internet I could find them. Translating every last page again and again. It would take me like days to get through one magazine. Talking to other people who are more focused on fashion history than participating in the substyle itself. The person who actually taught me the most about all of this was my friend Banyu, who speaks Japanese but does not participate in gyaru, just really is interested in the history and the archiving of it. So it's something that takes a lot of time, and it's a very slow process, but it's worthwhile. I think it's very interesting. So, all right, does anyone else have any questions? I'm just scrolling through the comments again. I love all the comments. Oh my God, that makes so much sense. Yeah. Okay, I'm seeing Egg didn't ask them to be in their magazine nor gave them credit. So back in the day, they usually would credit them by name, but a lot of gals would go by like a cutesy nickname because they didn't want like their full government name in a magazine. And unfortunately, it's come out over the years that a lot of these photographers were kind of creeps. They were all men, and they would approach schoolgirls in the streets and act a little aggressive sometimes. So there's problems all around with Egg magazine, but they would usually credit them by a nickname that the girls gave them. And there were frequent ones too. So there were girls that were in it every month. Let's see. Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of also, it's no wonder I feel so stressed around gal myself. It's due to the recategorization that plays into dilution. Yeah, it's always like, it makes it so much more stressful to be a part of it. And I mean, look at me, like, I'm a full-fledged gal and it stresses me out. Like, I don't feel like I know enough. Even though I've specifically gone out of my way to gain all this knowledge. Thank you, Jamie. Yeah. Unfortunately, Egg magazine has, people often talk about new Egg. Egg in the past has had its issues as well, but you know, it was the 90s. It was kind of the wild west at the time. Right. If anyone else has any questions or comments, I'd love to hear them. I'd love to hear from you guys, especially because I was in the other window the whole time. I couldn't read the comments before. Oh yeah, Jamie saying I never used to post online in gyaru. I just the other day posted an early look from when I was a baby gyaru in I believe 2020 or 2021. And it's been like 5 or 6 years, and I just got the confidence to post that to show baby gyarus in my server, like what kind of improving your makeup skills looks like. Because I'm still embarrassed by that. And like, I know what I'm doing now, but I am afraid that I get torn up for something I did 6 years ago. Yeah, it's unfortunately like, and I hate the reputation that ghetto has gotten as like a toxic and mean subculture, because a lot of us are really nice and want to help. I love helping baby ghetto. It's just that a lot of time people will come into ghetto circles with nothing and just be like, help me, and never actually participate, which makes it very difficult to deal with sometimes, admittedly. You know, I know it's a very nice community. If you send, you know, your makeup in progress, like in my experience, I've many times like drawn over it on PixArt or something, like what the shape of the makeup should look like and what I think would look good on them to help out and for them to copy the next time. But if it's just, you know, if you're just dropping in a ghetto environment being like, okay, well, I need these experienced people to do this, this, and this for me. It's like, okay, well, nice list of demands, but are you going to participate or are you just going to ask things of us? Oh yeah, the 2010s gyaru was, for anyone who like wasn't in that circle or space, like I very intentionally was a fan and not a gyaru at the time because it was terrifying. I was terrified if I gained any weight that I was going to get posted about on LiveJournal. So I did not participate pre-2020. I can say it's very much less toxic now. People are much nicer now. Yeah, and that's the beauty of this, is that you own up and you're like, yeah, hey, like when I first started, I was kind of an idiot about gyaru. I was like, I didn't know shit. So like, who was I to tell anyone anything? But as long as you're coming in somewhere being like, you're owning up and you're like, hey, I know nothing and I would love help. That's, you know, I think that's a very brave thing to do. I think that that's much braver than coming in and pretending like you know everything. All right. We have like 5 more minutes. Let me see. I'm scrolling all the way back. I feel bad reading some of these usernames out loud. I don't want to call you Trashly. I'm seeing Nico talking about cyber or rave style. That is actually that was a huge trend over the course of many years, particularly 2005, 2006, 2007. So post Bamba, the Angelique girls actually went into a style called epicer, which is epic trance music, and it was a lot of like sweatsuits, neon clothes, and that sort of thing. That was kind of like the start of raver culture within gyaru. I know you asked for outside of, but Trashly is her identity. I feel mean. Okay. If anyone has any other questions, just let me know. I'm trying to pull up my Pinterest real quick because I have a dedicated board for gyaru archiving. If I could figure out my username. Okay, so I'll type it in the chat. Okay, or my YouTube isn't connected. I will type it on the screen real quick. This is my username on Pinterest. If anyone wants to search, I have a very comprehensive archive of pretty much everything I find on the internet, and I build on it every day. But it has these more micro trends and styles like LA style, raver, one called Urashibu, Dokukawa, Loco Girl, all these things. And I think it'll be pretty easy to get like a good idea of the style from looking at the different categories. All right, I'm gonna stop sharing real quick. Hopefully everyone got that. I can try to join the chat if not. Oh, yay, thank you, Jamie. All right, thank you so much. I'm very happy. I'm always very happy to share information. It's a very passionate interest of mine, so I love talking about it and telling people about it. Thank you all for listening to me yap for an hour long. All right, thank you.